I just want to preface this by saying this would never have happened under Trump. Never in a million years would Trump have been humiliated internationally in the way that Biden has. But Biden has been humiliated internationally because he is a senile, doddering old coot. Here's just a recent example.
Must be matched with fairness and equity. Now, when President Harris and I took a virtual tour of a vaccination center in Arizona not long ago.
Didn't even correct himself. Like, it's one thing like flubbing something and saying, oh, I meant vice president. Fair enough. But he didn't even correct himself. Just President Harris and I. Well, who the hell are you if she's the president? But anyway, so he alleged that Vladimir Putin is a killer. Not much of a controversial allegation. But if we can play this clip.
You think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm. I do.
So what price must he pay?
The price he's going to pay, well, you'll see shortly. I'm not going to, by the way, we ought to be able that trite expression, walk and chew gum at the same time. There are places where it's in our mutual interest to work together. That's why
You just called him a murderer. Like, why would he want to work with you? I mean, don't get me wrong, I believe he is too. But, like, what gibberish is this?
You ever heard the phrase chew gum and walk at the same time?
Well, yeah, but can you do it, Mr. Biden?
It's literally Grandpa from The Simpsons who's like, and that was the style in the day.
But he interrupts himself halfway through his own sentence on the subject. It's like, what the hell is going on? Right, so unsurprisingly, like, Vladimir Putin just, he says, would you like a live debate? He came out saying this. It takes one to know one, and that's not just a children saying a joke. There's a deep psychological meaning in this. We will always see in another person our own qualities and think that he is the same as us. It's like, oof, this is pretty good shade being thrown by Putin here. Yeah, I might be a killer, but you only see that in me because you see it in yourself. It's like, ooh, okay. And of course he says, without irony, I'm wishing Biden good health. And so, yeah, gauntlet down. Biden opened his not his fat mouth, his really senile mouth, and was like, yeah, Vladimir Putin's a bad guy. And Putin's like, well, debate me, bro. And
stream on my channel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, literally, that was literally, we could do a live Zoom call where we both debate this, and Biden cucked. Biden, he declined because apparently Biden is, quote, quite busy, as the New York Post reports. Sorry, too busy for that debate, murderer. Takes one to know one. That's where we are.
It's not great. I mean, the US president running away from a debate.
No. I mean, do you think for a second that Trump would have just been like, no, I'm just too busy?
I would have been like, yeah, come on, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. He would have been smashing it all over the place. But, so yeah, Biden gets absolutely crushed on the IBS front with Russia. And so let's go to China, because, of course, there was the Alaskan US-Chinese diplomatic meeting yesterday. And it carries on today, but obviously we're ahead of the time zone. But before we do that, let's quickly refresh our memory about Dong Sheng. Now, you can see on this that the video that we're referencing here has been taken down. Do you remember a few months ago when we covered Dong Sheng? We'll give you a few of his quotes. We know the Trump administration is in a trade war with us, so why can't we fix the Trump administration? Why did China and the US used to be able to settle all kinds of issues between 1992 and 2016? I'm going to throw something out that may be a little bit explosive here. It's because we have people at the top. We have our old friends who are at the top of America's core inner circle of power and influence. During the US-China trade war, Wall Street tried to help, and I know my friends on the US told me they tried to help, but they couldn't do much. But now we're seeing Biden was elected, the traditional elite, the political elite, the establishment, they're very close to Wall Street. You see that, right? Trump has been saying that Biden's son has some sort of global foundation. Have you noticed that? Who helped Hunter build the foundations, got it. There are a lot of deals inside all of these. So this is Dong Sheng saying, look, we just give them stacks of cash, and we give them 2 stacks if they disagree. And it's
like everything the Trump campaign are accusing the Biden campaign of is true.
Yes.
And why would we lie about this? Because we stand to lose.
Yeah.
And then they took it down.
Also, you saw this video. Oops, we'll take that down then because we don't want you seeing this video.
Yeah.
So the US-China-Alaska meeting, in that light, was something of a catastrophe for the Americans, coming hot on the heels of the Russian catastrophe. So, as Politico report, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Secretary of State Antony Blinken met in Anchorage, Alaska, with Chinese diplomats Yang Jiechi and Wang Yi. And they haven't, at the moment, the Biden administration hasn't actually done anything yet. So they haven't rolled back the sanctions and tariffs imposed by Trump, and they want to work with China on common challenges like climate change. We do not seek conflict, but we welcome stiff competition, and we will always stand up for our principles, our people, and our friends, Sullivan said. It's like, do you know who the Chinese leadership are? Like, they're a fascist, genocidal regime that's currently creating an empire across the Orient. Like, you're just like, oh, we welcome stiff competition. Dude, these are not, like weak people. These are people who seem to be ruthless in everything that they do. Like, giving this kind of limp-wristed approach, I mean, you'll see why this doesn't work in a second. But Blinken said the US will not stop holding China accountable for its actions in places like Hong Kong, where Beijing cracked down on democracy, and the US did nothing. Its economic coercion of other countries, where the US has done nothing. Or what the US officials allege is a genocidal campaign against the Uyghur Muslims in China's Xinjiang region, where the US has done nothing.
Well, they alleged that there was cultural differences, so...
Where the US has provided cover for the genocide. But at least on the plus side, at least we now agree with Mike Pompeo. You know, they were all like, oh, how dare you? Well, he called it a genocide, and it is.
Well, I have seen, I saw, what was it, Voltaire's Ghost made a video about this, giving sort of the positive view, if we were to take this, trying a bit of a white pill about some of the people Biden's picked.
Yeah.
And some of them were saying things like, oh no, we recognize that they're a competitor now, we're not going to have this old relationship. But what was interesting is they all agreed that essentially they'd woken up under this because of how Trump spoke about them and the Trump administration spoke about them. And like, oh, we've realized Trump was right. And it was like, well, okay. Good.
Yes, the glorious golden god emperor was right about almost everything, amazingly, and somehow did nothing wrong, incredibly. Like, I keep saying this, Trump's reign over the United States is going to be a golden age, and people are going to look back on it in the near future being like, wow, I can't believe he was doing such a great job. But anyway, so the Americans said, the Americans said, look, the actions in Hong Kong and places like that threaten the rules-based order that maintains global stability. They're not merely internal matters after the Chinese told them to butt out of these internal matters. And it's like, I don't think the Chinese care about the rules-based stability of the world. And I don't...
Rules set by the American imperialists.
Yeah.
Like, that's their view on this.
Yeah. Why can't we have rules set by the Chinese imperialists instead? Which is what their position is. It's what they're doing. It's what the Belt and Road Project's about. It's what all of this is about. You know, it's creating a kind of counter power to the United States based in China. So anyway, Yang, the Chinese delegation, warned the United States to back off and then accused it of hypocrisy, saying the United States uses financial and military might to bully other countries. He also said America has a long-standing history of human rights problems, alleging that black people are being, quote, slaughtered in the United States. You know, are you going to take that from a genocidal fascist regime? A regime that has a social credit system and doesn't let its users use the internet lest they learn about the things that the Chinese regime is doing. You're just going to take that, are you? You absolute cuckolds. The hell's wrong with you? As if China cares about black people. Like, as if China cares about any of this. Like,
Was there a response, or...?
Not really. Well, there was, actually. There was, and it was a really pathetic one, right? So the US delegation said, such exaggerated diplomatic presentations are often aimed at a domestic audience.
Yes, they're playing a game of subversion, something we don't, which is embarrassing.
The US side intended to outline for the Chinese delegation in private some of the same messages that have consistently been delivered in public. The Chinese delegation, on the other hand, seems to have arrived intent on grandstanding, focused on public theatrics and dramatics over substance. Yeah, translation, we got owned. That's what the translation is there. They dunked on us. Jack Posobiec watched the entire thing. I haven't time to watch the entire thing, so we'll just go on his reporting, right? But I trust his opinion on this because he is a patriot. He says the opening remarks in Anchorage were agreed to be 2 minutes each. The CCP delegation opened with 20 minutes of blasting Biden's policies, BLM, division under Biden, and said the US is no longer a world leader. Blinken and Sullivan had little to no response. Disaster. Right? And then Never seen a CCP delegation treat a US delegation like this. They just openly bashed them to their faces. Blinken appeared amateurish and way out of his league, completely unprepared. And the next one, Kim, Putin, and Xi. Oh yeah, what did Kim Jong-un say about Biden recently?
I thought they'd just been ignoring their phone calls.
No, he called him something, like he was insulting him, in the same sort of way he tried to insult Trump.
I know his sister called him a dog that should be put down.
Right, okay, well, that's close enough. But anyway, how's she wrong? Kim, Putin, and Xi have now all publicly mocked Biden this week. Xi's delegation to their face, no one around the world has any respect for him. He is seen as weak and feckless. Are you guys just going to allow Biden to be like this? I mean, you realize that the Chinese have actually, the CCP have come out and told us publicly that they have bought off the Biden administration, and the Biden administration is just getting owned repeatedly in public, internationally. Like, this is embarrassing. This is deeply embarrassing. And the thing is,
what are they going to argue against as well? Like when the Chinese say, oh, you have a history of human rights abuses, you don't treat black people well, you're slaughtering them in the streets. Like the Trump administration as the patriotic liberals could turn around and be like, nah, that's BS, like you bunch of communists. But the Democrats, I mean, what actually can they argue against there? Because their entire campaign is, yes, that's true, and we're the ones who are going to fix it. So when the Chinese say that's your system, they can't denounce that or they'll undermine themselves.
I don't know, they're out of options. Right, and so like the patriotic side in the United States, which at this point is just the Republicans, have been robbed of any kind of political influence because of the last election, the various sort of sub-elections, and so it's all in the Democrats' hands now. It's all in the corrupt party that has been paid off by China, according to the Chinese.
like the guy, what was he? He was like the senior lecturer or like professor at some institution.
Senior lecturer on international politics at Beijing University.
Yeah, with loads of Communist Party connections, loads of people from the Communist Party.
Just to give a quick recap, it's not just that he has loads of Communist Party connections. Dong Sheng is a Communist Party member, and he was personally selected by Xi Jinping to go on a press tour, essentially, to Washington, and this is where he gives his story about the two stacks, where he was trying to get a book shop to host the premiere opening of the book, where Xi Jinping himself would go down there and sign copies of it, whatever, try and create positive press in the United States. And the owner was like, sorry, we're booked that night, and so he blackmailed and intimidated him into doing it because the guy wasn't corrupt and wasn't prepared to take the two stacks, and so he just intimidated him into taking the booking anyway, and so they had to take it. And he was like, see, there we go, everything's sorted. And it's like, these are horrible, immoral people.
But I was trying to get to the point that he's definitely high up. There's no reason to not take his word seriously.
He was personally chosen by Xi Jinping, and he's on a stage giving a talk to Chinese party member notables, Communist Party member notables, and they just put it up on YouTube because they say, no one's going to notice this. Well, we noticed. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.